Actually, the first group that we came up with is called Indian Entrepreneurs. These are not the groups, regional groups like Bangalore Entrepreneurs, Delhi, Goa, and all this. But Indian Entrepreneurs, there's a small story. I was attending one of these startup events in Bangalore by NASSCOM, and there was a panel of speakers of pretty successful people, and they were talking about, the conversation was on about how you can work with co-founders, what the responsibilities to align and how to figure out, and all these things. So when question answers came up, I stood up and asked this question, exactly these words. I told them India is a strange place where they tell you what to do on a date, but nobody tells you where to find a date in the first place. And exactly like this, the topic they were discussing about was what to do with co-founders than telling people where to find co-founders. When I asked them, a lot of people agreed with me that this is the biggest pain point in India because it's very hard to find co-founders. Usually people turn to someone they know from their childhood or college or something like that, but not everybody is lucky to get a co-founder in an exact manner that they wanted. For example, now I studied commerce, and the connections that I have back from my school or my university have nothing to do with the kind of business that I'm doing right now. Now, where will I go to find co-founders? There are people who are doing different things in their life and they're settled elsewhere. It's impossible for us to connect and do something with them. So it's easier to find a co-founder who is not perhaps my college mate or schoolmate or a neighbor that I grew up with, but what it requires is a profile and interest and passion of the person to be the same as mine, in order to come together and create something, right? And that's when they said this is the biggest pain point and someone has to do something about it. And that's when I started. I took up this website, indiancofounders.com, and then we came up with this particular WhatsApp group in order to facilitate this entire process to be very easy for entrepreneurs to find what they're looking for. But then again, I see the same kind of problem happening there in almost all the WhatsApp groups. The problem is that people don't open up. They are hesitant as to how to approach, and they cannot trust someone. I mean, how this trust thing is very tricky, really speaking. There are no guidelines that can assure you that these are the guidelines by which you can trust a person. There's nothing like that. You have to. It's just like a recruiting process. How do companies trust people who are completely strangers to them? It's by their profiles, by their work experience, by references made, right? And that's exactly how you have to go about. And they sit in this co-founders group, and then they're wishing. Rarely somewhere, I think close to 500 people are there in that group right now. It could have been more than 1,500 people, but then we are famous for kicking them out. All these people who break the rules. No matter how many times you tell them that this is only for co-founding options, funding, finding partners and stuff like that. They are so into habit of just advertising. They turn any platform you give them into an advertising platform, and that drives potential good entrepreneurs and investors away. They get bored of these kind of fish markets, and then now they lose interest. Most of the entrepreneurs that I know, successful entrepreneurs and investors that I know, rarely ever check their WhatsApp group, and once in a blue moon they open and then they see some messages, and then this is what I didn't want to happen in our groups. Our groups are meant to be what they are meant for. Otherwise, we will close them. This is clear-cut agenda. Okay. So what's the solution then? The solution is just that simple. Just put your message across in one paragraph or in one video or something like that. Explain what you're looking for, and always be the first to take risk. And this trust factor is such bullshit factor people talk about. Indian mentality is such that we have received these business practices from traditional business practices. We are not born entrepreneurs. Recently, because of this Western influence, we are thinking about concepts and how to go about solving a problem or adding value and all these kind of things. But then largely what we have received is very traditional practices. In traditional businesses, you needed these kind of trust factors where they would go only for the relatives or for a family member, but it doesn't work like that anymore because there are too many options, and it is highly competitive, and people are doing international businesses sitting somewhere else and doing things elsewhere. In such an environment, you can't go on blindly thinking about this trust factor. How do I trust someone who I meet in a group? You trust the same way a recruiter trusts you. I mean, people that you deal with, your customers, your vendors, they don't know you. They didn't grow up with you. Your dad or your uncle didn't introduce them. They were not your neighbors or something like that. But all the connections that we make, all the business connections, are what? They're strangers, more or less, isn't it? But there's a way of building trust. There's a process, and that process is just as simple. It's once again the qualification, the experience, and the references, right? This way, you got to come forward. You got to open your doors for possibilities to take place. Otherwise, it won't happen. It's a waste. Even if you sit in 100 WhatsApp groups,